Mr. Manik is a visiting faculty, guest faculty in Premier B schools, including IIM Indore, IMT Ghaziabad, etc. In addition, he has been giving training sessions for working executives at leading banks, including SBI, etc. I also welcome Professor Alok Pandey, Director IMS Ghaziabad, for guiding us, motivating us to continuously disseminate knowledge to our students and faculty staff members during this lockdown, during this COVID-19. So thank you so much. This is our 24th webinar in a row, and 25th and 26th are also lined up. One in this week, another in another week. So with this, I welcome both Mr. Manik Narang and Professor Alok Pandey, along with all the faculty, students, and staff members to this special webinar on corporate credit analysis by Mr. Manik Narang. Narangji, over to you. We'll take the question on the chat box. At the end, we'll give them time. We'll open the floor for the question answer session. Thank you, Narangji.
Yeah, thanks for the kind words. So I will straightforward come to the my presentation, and as the format suggested. So initially I'll be going through all the slide and explaining about the corporate credit analysis. Towards the end or maybe in between, we can have the questions and we can have the chat. So I will take visible. Sir, the screen is visible?
Yes,
Professor,
yes.
Okay,
yes.
okay, great. So I will, what my, objective here is to exactly share my experiences, how I have dealt with various, companies for the purpose of the credit ratings, or what is the approach of credit ratings to analyze any particular company. So just to give you a backdrop, there is no single formula to arrive at a ratings, credit rating. It's not that if X are the financial numbers, so Y would be the rating. At least in India, there is no such formula. We do have credit models, which are just not the just, but which plays a key important role in terms of arriving at some base ratings. But from that, we have to do a lot of adjustments, notching up or notching down, as the case may be. Okay, this is a background. And just to add one more thing, why credit ratings are required at all. So credit ratings are required because India is part of the Basel Agreement, which keeps on updating as per their meetings in there are a whole lot of countries which are part of it. So in those terms, RBI has adopted the guidelines of Basel II, and in that guidelines, initially it was told that any company which takes a credit of rupees 5 crores or above is necessarily required to be rated, right? So that from there, the credit ratings of bank loan got started. Okay, there are bank instruments which are NCDs and commercial papers, these are the market instruments for which SEBI is the regulator. For bank loan, RBI is the regulator, right? So the rating agencies are governed by two regulators. So this is a very small, brief about how the credit ratings got started and why it is at all required. So now I will take the process in terms of the analysis of the company, right? So I'll just stop my video, and now I'll take it. And if you are not, guys, if you're not able to see the change in the screen, please let me know, or please write in the chat box, because in one of the cases I experienced that there was some technical snag. Okay, then it
okay. I'll tell you, Manikji. Don't worry.
Yes, sir. Okay. So this is going to be our outline of the session, understanding the business the Porter's way. So why, and there's a why, what MBA students or what the freshers, what those guys do, they directly jump into the financial statements, which is not the right way, because financial numbers, the P&L statement, the balance sheet and the cash flows are the derivatives of the business performance, are the derivatives of the business per se, and it is not other way around. If we directly jump to the any P&L, balance sheet and cash flow, start calculating the ratios, start analyzing the financial statement, it will not result in the correct conclusion. The first and the foremost point is understanding the business. So that is why I have, and this Porter's Way is one of the ways to understanding the business. Though this is a strategy subject, the Porter's Way, but it has a lot of meaning in understanding the business. That is why I've covered, and I will run through this Porter's model for one of these companies. Right. Second is analyzing the working capital intensity of the company. Third would be understanding the solvency of the company. Fourth would be debt coverage indicators. And the last would be the credit enhancements. Okay, how the credit enhancements takes place in deciding the credit ratings of the company, mainly towards the upgrading the rating of that particular company. Right. So first, what is the objective of a business? You all always get into the shoes of the business when you try to understand any business. So objective of a business is simply a no-brainer. It is a wealth maximization. So what are the steps to maximize the wealth? So the first step is the companies need to make sales, right? Sales have to happen if you need to profits. Without sales, there are no profits, there is no business, right? Second is operating efficiently. Means you should have a good amount of EBITDA margins. You should have a good PAT margins. EBITDA margins means if you want to compare two companies together in the same business, EBITDA margins plays a very important role. Whereas the PAT margin would decide how the leverage of the company is. If a company is having one company is having a high amount of leverage in comparison to the other company, EBITDA margins may be same, but PAT margins may be lower, right? So therefore, you have to operate. EBITDA margins are one of the key ratios to understand the operating efficiency. So in business terms, what do you mean by EBITDA margin? It is the cost of converting raw material into finished goods and then selling them at a profit, right? That means operating efficiently. For that, we have some numeric number which is called EBITDA margins, right? I'm going in a very simplistic manner. Then you have to improve or maintain the margin. It should not be declining margins unless there is some kind of epidemic, serious competition, or your product is becoming obsolete. So if you're not able to maintain your returns or margins, then something is wrong. And as an analyst, we must analyze the reasons, the valid reasons for decline in the margins. Then converting, this is very important part, converting profits into free cash flows. So many times we are stuck up with only profit after tax or EBITDA. So here, what the meaning is, on what, if you have a PAT of 100 crores, whether it's interview question I'm asking you. I'm just telling, we'll discuss later once everybody's on mute. If a company is having 100 crores of profit, is there any possibility that company may default a debt obligation of 10 crores? The answer is yes. How? If you have made sales on credit. So if your clients which are not very in a bad position, in a bad financial performance, if they're not in a position to pay the money back for what services of goods you have sold, so your debtors would become a bad debtor. The client, the customer becomes debtors, and if you are not able to recover it in 1 year, the PAT would be very high, but the cash flows or the cash from operating activities would be very low, and the PAT doesn't get converted into cash flow from operating activities. Though the PAT would be 100 crores, you still would be under liquidity crisis if your major customers are not able to, or if you're not able to realize money from your major customers. So that is the only profit. Analyzing only profit is not sufficient. So any ratio analysis, any financial analysis in isolation has no meaning. That is why we see comparison between profit after tax and cash flow from operating activities. And I understand that every one of you knows what do you understand by cash flow from operating activities. Then the purpose of the business is whatever is the free cash, you have to expand the business. So either if you have a surplus, the profit gets accumulated, either you distribute it among the shareholders which have given you the capital. Given you the capital means have infused the money into the business, or you invest in a new project in that company and raise further debt or further funds in addition to the funds which were generated inside the business. So that is, these steps would lead to wealth maximization. That is the objective of the business. If your objective of the business is alone is not to make profits, right? You may make profits, but you are under liquidity crisis. You may make profits, but you are over leveraged, your solvency may be a question. So that would not lead to a wealth maximization. These are the steps. The whole, you have to see the business in a holistic point of view. That would lead to wealth maximization, right? So now let's understand the Porter's model. So I understand that you might have studied, or you may be studying this topic of, understanding business model the Porter's way. This is in finance it is not taught, but it is very much relevant in a corporate banking or in a equity research or investment banking. You need to understand the business first, otherwise the numbers have no meaning in itself. So I will just run through this kind of a stuff, taking Maruti Suzuki as an example, and we'll run all these three parameters, understanding how that Maruti Suzuki as a company before the COVID, certainly, because COVID is an exceptional black swan kind of an event which was not expected. So we'll just try to understand, run through that company into these five parameters. So first thing is the bargaining power of the suppliers. So how do we understand, that bargaining power of suppliers would be strong? Supplier means the suppliers of the Maruti Suzuki India Limited. So everyone understands. That is why I've taken a very simple, passenger vehicle example, because it's a consumer product. So who are the major suppliers? The engine components, the sheet metal components, the steel, the carburetor. There are almost more than 200 auto components in any passenger vehicle. But the which component is constitutes the majority of the cost for any passenger vehicle? It is steel, right? So how do we understand whether the steel manufacturers have the stronger bargaining power or Maruti has the stronger bargaining power? So whenever I interact with the students or in a training sessions with working executives, so what are the parameters to understand? So we try to understand which are the bigger players in India from which Maruti might be buying. It includes Steel Authority of India, which is SAIL, JSW, Tata Steel, and many more, bigger ones, 4 5. So then they try to analyze whether the net worth or the sales, which company has a maximum, the better sales in terms of comparison. So Maruti, as I understand, is normally having a sales of 70,000 odd crores, where SAIL or Tata Steel may have a sales of more than 1 lakh crore. So by comparing these financial numbers only, so many students or the participants, they tell that steel companies have a stronger bargaining power than Maruti because they are bigger in size. But again, that is where the numbers, they don't count. The business model counts, right? So, but the steel and the Maruti, if we compare, or for that matter, if we compare Tata Steel with Maruti Suzuki, Tata Steel makes steel, which is a commodity product, whereas Maruti makes, it's a brand in itself. It's not a commodity product. So here lies the difference. So even if Maruti makes purchases steel from any other company, maybe Tata Steel or JSW Steel, the difference between the two products, means steel by Tata Steel or steel by JSW or steel by Steel Authority of India, may not be of much difference. That is the definition of a commodity product. So Maruti, as a player, buys steel and manufactures, uses the steel to manufacture the car under the brand name of Maruti, whereas in a steel it's a commodity product. So therefore Maruti will always have a stronger bargaining power. To its stronger bargaining power, that doesn't mean that you start buying at a loss from the company, but certainly it will have a bargaining power. So it will at a much competitive price in comparison to any other any other user of the steel, if they are buying from the SAIL and or the Tata Steel. So in this case, the bargaining power of suppliers would be low in comparison to Maruti. Okay. Now we move to the next topic, which is threat of substitutes. So what do you mean by substitute? Here I'm trying to understand substitute of a passenger vehicle. I'm not talking of a Maruti per se. I'm talking about the car per se, passenger vehicle car. So many times what kind of answers I receive is that, threat of substitute is very high because there is a Hyundai, there is a Tata, there is a Volkswagen. So the question again, I repeat the question, it is, the word is substitute, it is not competition, right? So substitute for a passenger vehicle is public transport system. That public transport system may be in terms of metro, maybe in terms of local buses, which is DTC in Delhi, or maybe some other places local transport buses. In Haryana it is Haryana Roadways. So those are the substitutes. Then we compare the substitutes, what kind of, how do we analyze, substitutes is high or low. So we take a data from, like, metro started in Delhi somewhere around 2002 or 2003, in and around that period only. So the ridership of the metro have increased phenomenally. But whether that increase in the ridership has dented the sales of Maruti car in any which ways, specifically in the, I'm talking about the NCR region, because here the metro has come, the first in across the whole country. So it has not decreased at all. In fact, it has further increased. I'm not going into the reasons of, why, because of the increasing disposable income, for the increasing preference of car, or increasing employment opportunities in NCR. Those all kind of stuffs are the reasons. They are the valid reasons, I agree. But the fact of the answer is, whether the substitute, is there a set of substitutes for passenger vehicle? It is not. Despite that public transport system has improved significantly over past 2 decades, but the car sales have also improved. So these two data numbers are important to arrive at a conclusion that threat of substitutes is not at all high for a company, for passenger vehicles, and for a company like Maruti. Correct. Next, we come to the bargaining power of buyers. See, this is very tricky. Bargaining power of buyers means you and me, like people who purchase car for their travel, or whatever purposes, for traveling on vacations or for official travel. So so on what grounds we need to understand this thing? So the important part here is that, in a competitive, in an open economy, everybody is free to buy his or her own choice of preference in terms of any product. So if I am today a consumer of, a client of, or a customer for Maruti, I may switch over to Hyundai for that matter, or after 4 5 years I can switch over to Volkswagen. But the important thing here is that we need to understand what is the market share of Maruti in the passenger vehicle market segment. So consistently the market share for Maruti has maintained around 48% to 50%. Sometime back it had come down to almost 4 5 years back in 2013. It had come down to around 42%, but it regained its share to 48%. So that's what it is. It is still attracting customers. Customers still glued to the Maruti brand. It has a several kind of a valid reasons, that it is a very strong network, it is a brand, its parts are competitive in pricing, any roadside mechanic can repair Maruti. So n number of reasons are there. But again, that doesn't mean that that bargaining power of buyer comes down. So in a competitive environment, it can be, bargaining power of buyers will always be high, but the only point is that company has been able to maintain its significant market share, and that too ranging from 48% to 50%. And next best, the best next alternative, or the best next competitor was, or currently is, Hyundai, which has a market share of less than half of Maruti's, around 18%, 18 to 20% only. So that shows that despite that, in an open economy, consumers are free, but still they are preferring Maruti. So from my mind, it can be moderate to on a stronger side for Maruti, or for a bargaining point of buyer. It is, I feel it is a moderate kind of a, but it is debatable again, right? We may discuss it once the session is open for discussion. Then the fourth point is threat of new entrants. So when we talk about threat of new entrants, the answer usually what comes up, that there is no threat for new entrants. There are so many other players in India, and there are other players which may also enter. Now MG has entered India, Kia has entered India, which all will give a lot of tough competition to the companies like Maruti. Hyundai is coming up with new models. So again, we have to get back to the data. We have to go to the history. What has been, in last 2 decades, how Maruti has performed vis-a-vis its competitors. So we see General Motors. They ventured into India. They failed in India. They stopped production for India. Only one plant is running. That is also for exports. So they could not compete with Maruti because Maruti is the largest player in India with 50% of market share. Another player, Volkswagen, which is the largest player in China, the largest car selling player in China, has not been able to make any kind of a significant market share in India. Again, it is sort not a failure, but again, they are not able to succeed in India. So these two are the big names where, which tantamounts that the threat of new entrants is not very high for Maruti. It's very, very, very low. And we keep seeing that Tata Motors have been introducing a lot of new cars, but none of cars have been successful in terms of how Maruti cars have been successful. And if we talk about that threat of new, many people give the reasons that the threat of new entrant is low because it requires very huge capital to set up a plant, a car plant, passenger vehicles plant. But again, nowadays, whenever I say nowadays, it means pre-COVID, right? Because COVID again is a very unusual thing which has happened. So pre-COVID days, capital was not scarce. So capital for the right investment or for the right kind of a project, it was not scarce. There's a huge amount of investors available. If they are convinced with that they will get the right kind of ROI, they will definitely invest, and definitely invest in a growing economy like India. So capital is not a scarce. The point here is that Maruti has made such a strong brand in terms of recognizing, recalling brand, and in terms of performance, that its market share it has maintained, and other players have not been able to made any significant increase in the market share. So that is why threat for new entrant is very low in terms in from the point of view of Maruti. Correct. So next is industry rivalry. Again, what I hear from the participants is that there's a huge industry rivalry because there are a lot of other players. Again, same we have
Manekji,
4 5 players in.
Manekji, sorry
Yes
to
sir, yes sir,
interrupt. After four to
yes sir,
five
yes
minutes, we'll log out. Again, you have to join
sir.
back.
Okay,
Yeah. Thank
okay,
you.
okay, no
Yeah,
problem,
please.
no problem. Thank you. So so this industry rivalry, they keep saying that participants normally they answer that there are so many other players in India. MG has come up. There is a Hyundai, there is a Kia. So industry rivalry is too much in passenger vehicles. Then I have to tell them again, there is a difference between the word rivalry and competition. Guys, we need to understand this. Rivalry is something where you badmouth your competitor, where you keep filing suits. There are legal hassles with the competitors. There are a lot of new regulations, due to because of favoring or not favoring, whatever you say, to one client, to one company only by the government or by the state government or by the regulators. So that is called a rivalry. In an open economy like India, competition is required. That is why we have competition law in India, so that there is no monopoly in India. That, that is why there will be a competition. There has to be more than one player. So rivalry you can see in a very recent kind of an example is in a telecom sector. That is called rivalry, where Airtel versus Jio were fighting, in regulator, or in courts or in media or with the government, or a lot of new regulation had come up, something like that. So that is called rivalry. Or maybe a decade back you could have seen, Pepsi versus Coke kind of an example, where they both were bringing ads to demean or to show low image for the other brand. That is called rivalry. So I don't see that in a passenger vehicle industry right now has an industry rivalry, or you can say a kind of a rivalry where both are fighting with each other. Normal competition will always be there. There will be some price cutting to lure consumers. There will be new launches of the cars. They may copy somewhat other designs. That is absolutely part of the business, and so far it is legal, right? But it's a competition, so it's we cannot treat it as rivalry. So this is how 5 parameters I've run through it. So this is how we analyze the company, and it is very it is very easy to analyze the company when you are sitting right now. Today we can say that Airtel is struggling. It was struggling with Reliance Jio because Reliance as a group has deep pockets and it can sell things for free to close down the other mobile operators. But Airtel, if you see 10 years back, maybe 15 years back in 2005, if we at that point in time, if we would have run through this model with Airtel, it would have come very similar model like Maruti. That this is superb company for the long term. There are no threat of substitute. There is no threat of new entrants. There is no rivalry. So given the foreseeable future, we can understand this, but we cannot predict in future. If tomorrow, suppose for example, Reliance thinks that they would like to come into the passenger vehicle market in India, it can again place similar kind of strategies what it did in Geo. Then again, a lot of other players maybe shut down their plants and may have to stop production and maybe out of the business, like so many other players in telecom business have have to shut down their shop, have to go back out of India, right? This is one way of analyzing. There are many ways, other ways of analyzing from risk point of view, which maybe I will cover once. I think Professor Naik, I think it is getting logged out. You are mute, sir.
We have
Yeah,
around
it's less than 1 minute.
less
Less
than
than
1
1
minute.
minute.
Right.
Okay,
So you can
okay,
continue.
okay.
We'll rejoin
Okay.
again.
It will
No issues.
automatically. It will.
Yeah,
Go out,
it
right?
will automatically get over. Then we'll start
Okay,
again.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Immediately
Okay,
I'll
okay.
rejoin and
So
you can rejoin again.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually,
So
Manik, just 1 minute, 1 second. Our official